Okay, welcome everybody. It's Monday. I know that, and it's September 27th, and it's the year 2021. And it's amazing. It's the year 2021. How do we come up with that number? I know it's related to other things, but even so, how did that get done? There's some interesting questions that need to be answered, but we'll get to that in another conversation. So today's talk is about communication, the first skill. And of course, the preamble on this and what we learned in the last lesson was that the way everything is handled, or the way everything is accomplished, or the way everything is done is by communicating with somebody else. You can't communicate to yourself. I mean, you can talk to yourself, but you really aren't going to get very far in doing that as far as, this business. And one of the first areas that I have to say that needs to be looked at is, this is a business. First and foremost, this is a business. And most people, it was interesting. I heard on Sequokai on Saturday that a survey was done in 2010 when Ben Woodward was the president, that said only 4% of the people were involved with this as a business to make money. And in 1990, when I was doing the business, I did a survey and it was 94% were doing it to make money and as a job. So something was wrong in the way that survey was asked or answered, because that's too far a discrepancy. Or maybe that the people that were left were just, those were they were only interested in the product. But in playing this game, we have to understand the game that we're playing. I've likened what we do many times to football, because I'm a football fan and I like that game. And if we look at the game, we have two opposing sides, and we've got one team marching down the field and the other team trying to stop them. And that's the game. And that's a score. You score and you prevent scores, and you have a time limit, and you have a winner and you have a loser. And so from the standpoint of doing that, then there's barriers and obstacles to overcome. And I remember when I first got involved with the business, there was no Royal Diamond. That position didn't exist. The highest rank was Diamond. And when they created the Royal Diamond, again, that was, okay, that's way off there somewhere in the future. And then when I arrived at that spot, it was like, okay, well, what's next? Because the journey was the game. It was the journey that was the fun part. It was running into an obstacle or a barrier and figuring out, how do I get over that? How do I get around that? How do I accomplish that? And so on and so forth. And it's all done through effective communication. So when I analyzed the business and I looked at, okay, well, my first job was life insurance sales. And it was not life insurance, it was sickness and accident with Mutual of Omaha, and it was in the 70s. And I lived in Winnipeg, Canada, and there was a show on TV called Wild Kingdom. Now, some of you may have seen Wild Kingdom, and there was this big guy by the name of Merlin Perkins, and he was the host of the show, and he traveled the world hunting and fishing and nature stuff and all that sort of stuff. And it was a family. Everybody watched it. I think it was on Sundays too. And the whole family sat and watched that show. Well, Mutual of Omaha sponsored that show, and so I worked for Mutual of Omaha. I did meet Merlin. He came up to Winnipeg to go up to because there's tons of lakes and all kinds of fishing and stuff like that. But here was my job. My job at that time was to go out to the farmlands and knock on farm doors and make my presentation for them to buy a sickness and accident policy. Now, I hated dogs because I was traumatized as a kid, and every farmhouse had a dog. And so every time I drove down the driveway to go to this farm, they had long roads to get to the farmhouse, and I'd park the car. It was like, oh my God, I got to get out of the car and get to that door, knock on the door, and hopefully dogs won't come up. Well, every once in a while, dogs would hit my car before I even got out of the car. Sometimes I'd have to wait in the car until the farmer came out of the house. But what I learned in this was a couple of things. One was the skill of persistence. Now that's an interesting thing, because in this business, persistence as a skill is important. Because if you think Rome's going to be built in a day, then you got to be on another planet and another time thinking, because it doesn't happen that way for most. Every once in a while, somebody wins the lottery. Every once in a while, somebody gets put on a golden pedestal and says, I did this. But the majority of the people that are on planet Earth have to work and accomplish and do their thing. So persistence is a key to this business. And the other thing was, I learned to make a presentation using a presentation book. Now, in the sense of, and again, what we're talking about here is the skills of communication and how to develop those skills so that you become better at doing this business. So what the program was that I had a pitch book. It was like an 8.5 by 11 book. It was nicely done. It was all color and graphics and nice big words and language. And so the object is I got to sit in the farmer's house at the kitchen table and open the book and flip the pages and essentially read what it said on there. And that was the presentation. Now, the interesting learn skill there was to make a presentation in a regimented fashion from start to finish, and say the same thing over and 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 over. Now I could go on for an hour saying over and over and over and over and over. As a matter of fact, I can go for years saying over and over and over and over and over. In the book I wrote, Vested Interest, chapter 10 was practice, 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 practice. So in doing that presentation, what I learned and the skill I got was, all of a sudden, I didn't have to use the presentation. I knew the words. And therefore, I could communicate those words at will when I wanted to. When I observed a situation going on that needed those words, they would just come out. Why? Well, because of practice. Now, Renee, you just said something at the beginning of this, which says, boy, I haven't done this for a long time. I'm a little nervous about going to make this presentation. Exactly. So that's not a make wrong. That's simply a valid point of your awareness there was spot on, is that the key to being good at this game is to be on at all times, because of you're constantly, involved at making this work. And it's all based on communication. So I talk to these farmers, I make the presentation, I have a presentation book. Well, I translate that into Nikan. I created a presentation book in Nikan, which had articles and it had success stories and it had graphs and it had charts and it had my plan and it had where I was going and all that kind of stuff, so that if I sat down with somebody, rather than thinking about, well, how am I going to explain this, I could show them. And not only show them, but I knew the words and we could talk about it intelligently. So I learned persistence. I learned to make a presentation using a presentation book, and I got over my fear of dogs. And that was a skill I got from doing life insurance. Now, I only lasted about, a year and a half. I was a young guy, I was in my 20s, because my manager told me how to bet on football. And so he said, I bet I have a pool with football, and every Sunday I bet on the games. Would you like to participate? And I'm, sure, what's this all about? Well, he says, well, there's 12 games being played at that time on Sunday, and you bet, and then, the bookie pays you if you win, you pay the bookie if you lose. So I won 11 out of 12 games the first time out. Well, no, you know what happens? You get hooked. When you get hooked, it takes you down many paths that may not necessarily be the right path, but they are paths that you take. So I left the insurance business to be a pro gambler. That didn't work. It wasn't what I needed to do. But again, what we learn by participation is we learn what to do and what not to do. We learn what to say and what not to say. We learn how to say it and how not to say it to become good. Now, the next area that I went to work was in telemarketing. And I worked for a company called Dominion Directory, and they sold yellow page ads. Now, we all used to have phone books and we all used to have phones in the house. And if you wanted something, you said, let your fingers do the walking, and you'd pick up the yellow page book and you'd find what you were looking for. Because that was pre-internet, and all that kind of good stuff. So anyway, so this was a little different angle, but again, this was the customers were a kind of an audience that they were already listed in the book. Majority of them had a listing because this is where they got their business. So they were a captive audience. So my job was to phone this captive audience up and then upgrade them, get them to get the next size ad, get them to get bigger ads, get them to go into larger presentations. Now, there were two divisions of Dominion Directory. One was the telemarketing and one was the infield, the big boy business where they went out store to store with all the big accounts. They would have serviced in today's marketplaces companies like Home Depot or Starbucks or things like that had national, multinational accounts. I was on the lower end because I was just starting out and dealing with the smaller guys. But what I learned in this arena were a couple of interesting skills. One was the ability to control a conversation over the phone. Now, you may not think this is a skill that's necessary, but when you pick up the phone and you're making a presentation, you're talking to somebody that's in their environment, dealing with their stuff and their agenda on their timetable based on their circumstances. And what are you doing? Well, you're trying to get them to listen to you. You're trying to get them to partake in what you do. You want them to buy your product. You want them to upgrade their service. So it was the ability to tell stories. Now, we're all storytellers. I want you to know that you're a storyteller. This is what you do. You tell stories. You tell stories about Nikon. You tell stories about the product. You tell stories about the product's benefits. You tell stories about the business. You tell stories about the business opportunity. You tell stories about the problems of the world. You tell stories about sleeping and how you can sleep better with our product. Well, when you look at it in the raw sense of what we do, it's a story about a specific thing, a specific topic. Now, in dealing with the yellow pages, it's all on the phone. I phoned these guys up, and our target, and this was another skill that I learned there, was the target was a 10% increase in the book value on an annual basis. That was the target. So I had a budget of like $100,000. So my goal for the year was $110,000 in booked advertising. Well, that was a skill I learned, was to target my production to go bigger and better, bigger and better, bigger and better, bigger and better. I learned later, I got more skills in the targeting thing. Okay. Now, I sold automobiles, and that came somewhere next and somewhere in the line. And that was more like a retail sales outlet. Now, in a retail sales, because the customers came to your car lot. And so now many skills were learned here. And I was taught by some of the masters in the car industry, which was really kind of beneficial. And one of my heroes was a guy by the name of Joe Girard. And he was the greatest car salesman in the world. And as a matter of fact, he got up to selling somewhere in the neighborhood of 4,500 cars a month himself. Think about that. Now he had almost like his own dealership of selling cars, and I learned so much about communication and follow up and support and keeping your name in front of people, and the drip system, and the birthday, the President's Day, Valentine's Day, St. Patrick's Day, July 4th Day, Independence Day, as means to say hello and stay in front of your customer, because when you leave and the door closes, they're off in their world. And for the most part, your world is gone for them because they're busy. So again, that was a skill that was in. But here was the other skill that was really important. It was the ABC skill, and it was the creating a rapport right away. So somebody walks on the lot and it's like, okay, hi, how are you? My name's Dave Rolfe. I represent the Ford Motor Company here, blah, blah, blah. Your name is? Oh, John. Okay, John. And this is your wife, Mary? Oh, hi, Mary. Nice to meet you both. Well, how can I help you today? So you had to instantly grab hold of those people and start to create rapport. And what was the rapport? Well, the rapport was a friendly environment where they wanted to communicate with me, and I wanted to communicate with them. Why? Because I want them to buy a car. Because if they buy a car, I make a commission. There was no other reason. Because here's what I knew. If I didn't sell them a car, they'd walk off the lot and the next lot would sell them a car. So it was a do or die situation in that sense. But so I learned rapport, learned how to greet people, learned how to small talk real quickly. And I learned how to find out what was needed and or wanted. Huge, absolutely humongous skill, because that's the key to success in Nikan, is finding out what other people need and or want, and then helping them get it. See, if you really understand Nikan or any of these network marketing type businesses, you make money when somebody else does something. Period. Not what you do. It's when somebody else does something. So how do you make a commission? When somebody buys a product. How do you get overrides and leadership bonuses? When you create an organization and the people in that organization sell products. So the relationship is getting others to get the job done. So in the sense of what I learned in the automobile industry was very helpful in that sense of developing rapport, finding out what was needed and wanted quickly, and then getting to the language and communicating the solution that they were interested in. So Leo comes into my lot and he wants to buy a Ferrari, because I'm on a Ferrari lot, and Leo's a Ferrari kind of a guy. I know that he'd want to drive a Ferrari. Anyway, he comes in and I say, hey, how are you doing? That's good. I'm really glad you're excited. Have you ever had a Ferrari before? Do you know what they drive like? We'll go for a spin, et cetera, et cetera. And we finally land on a car. It's a beautiful red car. It's a red Ferrari. And he says, how much is this? I say it's 120,000. And that'll cost you about 4,000 a month. And he said, man, I don't know. It's kind of expensive. Well, let me ask you this question. What budget did you have in mind? Well, I was thinking of spending like maybe 100 max, and I could, maybe handle 3,000 a month. Well, let me ask you this question. If I could get that car in your hands and you could drive off the lot and it was 100,000 or the payments were 3,000 a month, do I have a deal? And I put my hand up. And now here was the interesting aspect of playing this game, because every time this was happened in every car sale. If I can get this deal for you, would you buy? Yeah. Now I go into my manager. The manager happens to be the A guy, and we've all heard A, B, C. I'm the B, the customer's the C, the manager's the A. And so I go into his office and I say, yeah, Leo's out there. He wants to buy this Ferrari for 100 grand and 3,000 a month. I told him it would be $4,000 and 120,000 because I knew what the costs were. I knew what the price was. I knew what the margins were. I knew what we could do. So I knew where to start with. And now I'm talking to my manager and I know what we're trying to do. And what we're trying to do is figure out how to get this guy to buy this car. And we know its price. So then we play this game. Well, in the sense of the ABC was using the expert to come in and help me with the prospect to get the close, because what game are we playing here? And the game that we're playing is a game of the customer buys the product or the person signs up and joins you in the business. That's the game. Anything else is a complete waste of time. Why would you do anything else? This is the game that we're playing. I mean, when you think about it, if you want to have a party, then go to a party and have some fun and don't worry about it. Go to Vegas because everything you do in Vegas stays there, right? If you want to play a sport, then play a sport. But in the business world, when you're playing the game in business, play the game. Because it's a lot of fun if you do it well. I mean, it's a heap of fun. And this business is just, I can't tell you the wonderful benefits that this business offered Dave Rolfe. And I've been in this industry for 45 years. And even the 12 years that weren't good, the others were fantastic. So again, so the ABC, so we go in there and the manager knows what to do. And he says, okay, here's what you do. Go back and say you'll do it for 3,500. And so I go back to Leo and I said, okay, talk to the manager, can't do the 4, but here's what we can do. Or can't do the 3, I can do it for 3,500. So we can put you in the car, fully covered, all that for 3,500. Do we have a deal? Stick out my hand. And Leo, if I've done my job right, and this is what he wanted, will say yes 9 times out of 10. So that skill that I learned there was the skill of persistence, the skill of finding out what's needed and or wanted, and the ability to ask the question. Now, here's that important message. See, how is a sale going to get done? How is a person going to buy this product, or how are they going to join you in the business? You've got to ask them. I mean, I really want you to think about this, because for the past couple of years of doing this call, I think everybody's sitting around waiting for something to happen rather than going out and making it happen. See, that's the opportunity. You can make it happen. You don't have to wait. You can actually go out there and create the empire you want to create, because it's one of those type of situations. And you really have to understand how that works. So again, very, very, very important skill. My biggest area that I won the most at and learned the most at was telemarketing investment sales in the oil and gas industry. Now, this was a fascinating industry because, number one, I'd never done oil and gas. Number two, I'd never done, asking people for a lot of money over the phone. And, I was nervous. And I remember I went in to get a job. I was in a situation where getting a job wasn't the easiest thing for me to do. And so I applied for this job and I went in there, and it was Good Friday. Now in Canada, Good Friday is a lockdown holiday. I mean, it's just nobody works on Good Friday. And here this company is full blown working, and there's, $100,000 worth of business on the board. And I'm thinking, if it's Good Friday and there's $100,000 on the board, this has got to be something hot. And it was. Now, here's I'm going to give a little description of what it was so they can begin to understand the skills that were developed. So the idea was that the federal government, the Bureau of Land Management, auctioned off the oil and gas rights to government land. And you as an individual citizen could file an auction or a lottery ticket, so to speak, to win those rights. Well, what this company did is they hired engineers and oil and gas people to pick the right properties. And then they had a system that they would utilize to file on those properties using their clients. And they'd try and outweigh the number, because a lot of people didn't know about this program existed to begin with. So very few people were filing, just oil companies. And if you got the rights, then the oil companies would bid and buy the rights from you. And in some cases, clients made millions of dollars doing this. Okay. So the idea was that you phoned up people and asked them if they invested, and you qualified them to see if they, so a lot of steps. Well, okay. So first of all, they gave us a list of names to talk about. We've heard about this before. You got to have a list of names. You got to have somebody to talk to, because you got to be able to make a presentation, because what are we doing here? We're doing a business. And in this business, we have two objectives. One is to sell product, and two is to get somebody to join you in the business. So I'm in the investment arena, and they give us these cards, and we got to call these names on this card and hopefully get them over the goal line and get them to invest in our program. So first step is I call you up, and I'm calling up Jeannie. And I say, Jeannie, I'm from Leland Capital, and we're involved in the government's oil and gas lease program. Do you make investments from time to time? And Jeannie says, yeah, I'd make some investments. And I said, okay. So if I had a great program and you could make some decent money, anywhere 100,000, 200,000 in profits for investment of anywhere from $5,000 to $20,000, would that be of interest to you? And Jeannie says, yeah, that would be of interest to me. Okay. So I'd like to send you a package of information, have you look at it, and then in about a week's period of time, get back and make a, go over it with you to see if this is something you'd like to participate on. Would that be an agreement that you would be interested in undergoing? And she says, yeah. And I said, if you like it, can you afford to spend $10,000 to get involved? Yeah. Okay, good. Let me send the package, get the address, boom, 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 send it out. A week later, I call you up and I said, let's go over it. And okay, so here's what I didn't tell you. In the first part, I had a script I was given, and they were on boards in my little cubicle. And it started on the left-hand side. Hello, Jeannie, my name is Dave Rolfe. I'm from Leland Capital. Everything I just said was a script. Now, it got all the way down to handling the objections, et cetera, the bottom line, okay? So then the same thing with the following week, it was a script was on the board. It was a presentation script. So I'd call you back and I'd do the presentation script. Now, I'm gonna tell you this story, and it's kind of cute because it works. So it's a banker. And it's a bank manager in a bank in Kansas City, and I phoned him up and qualified him. He makes investments, and I qualified him for $10,000. A week later, I call him up, and I make the presentation to him. And at the end of the presentation, I said, all right, let me get you started. Now, what I learned, when you ask a closing question, you shut up. In other words, if you're asked that, well, I would like you to join me in the business, and then you shut up. Because the first person to speak is going to be the one that's going to lose or win as you want to play it. So anyway, I call this banker up, I make the presentation. I asked him, okay, let me get you started. Well, it was silent for at least 10 minutes. I was pulling my hair out, trying to figure out what's going on. Do I say something? Did the phone go dead? Because we're dealing with landlines, no cell phones at that time, blah, blah, blah. And at the end of that period, he says, okay. Okay, here's the paperwork. We filled out the paperwork. I call FedEx. They go pick up the paperwork and the check the next day. $10,000 comes in my office, and I made a nice $2,500 commission. Okay, now I did this for a couple of years. I made a nice living, and a number of benefits, a number of skills were learned here. The first one was I made about 100 dials a day. And then doing 100 dials a day, that got to about 20 people I got to make a talk to. And out of that, I got to send out about 5 or 6 packages. And out of that, if I did that for a week, I got to make 1 sale. So I said, well, 1 sale isn't going to be enough. I need more. What do I need to increase? Well, what I found out there was that if I increased the dials, I experimented, I tried different things, but it was the dials that worked. So I went from 100 to 120 and I doubled my sales. So I went up by 20%. So here's what I learned there is how to manage my activities. In other words, what do we have here? We have an opportunity for you to build whatever you want. Period. Now, what do? We talk to people. We find out what's needed and wanted, and we present them, and we're looking for people that are hungry, that want what we want, and are willing and understand what they've got here, and go to work and do the activity of what? Talking to other people. So how many people do you have to talk to make this work? Well, I remember doing a call a month or two ago, and the person says, well, I've talked to 10 people and nobody said yes. Okay, fine. You talk to 10 people, talk to 100, call me back. So one of the biggest problems that most of us have is feeling comfortable doing what we're doing. In our skills and our ability to communicate and say the right things, and we got fears and we got societal pressures and we got considerations. Mary, who is somebody I work with a lot, and we were on a mentoring program, and she said to me the other day, she said, I learned that I was told that, one of the things you had to do in this business was develop a relationship with your people. So I've been developing relationships before I've talked to people about the business or the product. So here we have a situation where she totally misunderstood, and this is just not understanding the big picture, was it's the relationship after you get somebody in the business that's where you have to develop the relationship. Because my story, I joined network marketing without any relationship. Many people have, because they recognize something they saw. So what becomes important in how and what we communicate that makes a success. So you've got this opportunity to build whatever you want with this deal. What's going to make it work? Well, how many people you talk to. I mean, if you only talk to one person a year, you're not going to go very far. But if you can talk to 20 people a day, again, you're going to go far quickly. So that was another skill. The other skill that I learned was to ask for the closing question and shut up. Would you join me in the business? It can get really uncomfortable, but it's a skill. And because the person says, well, yes, I could join you in business, but I don't have the time. All right, I get what you're saying. So other than time, would there be anything that would hold you up from joining me in the business? Well, no. I mean, if I could deal with the time. Well, let me ask you your question. What's your understanding of the time required to build this business? And you handle the objection, and then okay, so we got it on time. You understand that we can do this together. I'm going to help you build. You feed me some names. We'll build your business. We'll go down there. Is that okay? Is that acceptable? Is that understood? And they say yes. All right. Will you join me in the business? Yes, I will. So it's all communication. It's asking the right questions. It's saying the right things. It's providing the right information in a way that matches what's needed and or wanted. So you have on one side, you got to find out what's needed or wanted. On the other side, you've got to communicate it in a way that it's understood and can be applied and utilized. When I first got approached, I was approached on the product. I didn't need the product. I didn't have any owies. I didn't have any problems. Another story. Gal calls me up. She needs some help. She had a customer that they were going to buy a whole bunch of product, a sleep system, a bed, a whole, $3,000 or $4,000 worth of product. And she said they didn't buy. And I said, well, what happened? I said, well, we went through the demonstration, and they said they wanted to get the bed and a couple other things. And then I said to them, well, you might want to take a look at this as a business so you can get it at a wholesale price. And the guy says, well, what do I have to do this as a business? And she handed him a bunch of information. He said, well, I'm going to have to review this. I'll get back to you. Guess what didn't happen? He never got back to her. They never bought any product. They never got in the business, and she lost the sale. When the person said to her, yes, we want to buy the bed now. See, again, this is a skill of recognizing when the buyer says yes, you say, okay, I want to buy that Ferrari. This is Leo. I'll pay you $33.50, and I know I can do it for $33.50. And I say, can't buy it. Sorry, Leo. See you later. No. So again, in the sense of what's the biggest skill you need to do here is learn how to communicate so that others understand and want what you are communicating about. And again, it just takes, it's practice. So that comes to the next part of, okay, so I don't think anybody's new here. Maybe there's some new folks on the call that are just starting out, but so you have a warm market and a cold market. The warm market is the people you know, and the cold market is everybody else. Now, all of them get involved. All of them say no, yes, all of them say no, and some of them that say no come in. We learned that from the last lesson because I've got the personal experience. Now, the key to this, again, is the same key as everything else. When I sold life insurance, I didn't know any of those farmers. When I sold Yellow Pages, I didn't know any of those people that bought Yellow Pages. When I sold automobiles, I didn't know anybody that bought a car from me. And when I did the investments, I didn't know anybody that bought those things either. So what's the message? Is there a specific group that's better than others? Well, here's the benefit of those you know. The benefit of those you know is you know who they are, what they like, what they want to go. And here's my advice if you're starting out is who's your best friend that'll sit down and wants to play with you, that you want to play with, that likes what you do, that you think you can get them signed up in this business because you can play together, then that's the first person you go talk to. Now, if you understand how network marketing works, you understand that it's the depth in the organization that's critical, not the width. The width is a secondary factor, but it's the depth, it's support, because here's the viewpoint that is most important. What's going on underneath you? So if you can't see anything going on underneath you, then to that degree, it's not working for you. And you'll have a tendency to get bamboozled by life and get sidetracked and not focus your attention and not do what you're supposed to do and not talk to the next person because you're sidetracked and doing something else because you don't see anything underneath you. And so therefore it's not working. And that's been a history since I've been in the business since 1975. And it's no different from any other network marketing company. It's no different from every other person. And from the standpoint of all the people, understand, I've been in Nikan for 32 years and I've seen everybody come in and do what they did or not do what they didn't do. And the bottom line is the successful people did what they're supposed to do, and the not successful just didn't do enough of what they were supposed to do. That's it. There's no failure. It's just, are you going to put in the effort and do the job? Are you going to learn how to communicate and communicate it properly? And are you going to stay focused? So if I bet you dollars to donuts, that if you spent 8 hours a day building this business, you could easily make $100,000 to $200,000 a year. But you got to spend 8 hours doing it. And in some cases, you're going to spend 10 or 12 or 15. But most people don't do that. And you really got to look at this in your sense of how much time are you spending doing this? Because this is no different than anything else. If it's life insurance, if it's investment sales, if it's telemarketing, if it's the retail trade, when you think about it, every single piece of product or thing you've got in your house was sold by somebody. Everything. The lamps, the wall coverings, the paint, the flooring, the carpets, the furniture, the books, it's just the nature of what goes on. So, and it all based on communication. So the key is so how do we learn this? How do we package this all up? So my favorite way to do it was to script everything out. So if you're going to approach your friends, then you write down how you would approach your friends. And you get with your mentor, you get with your coach, and you practice. You phone them up and say, "Hey, Bob, how are you? This is Dave here. Curious, we've been talking for a long time. How's the job going? Good. How's the wife? How's the kids? Gone anywhere exciting? Got any travels? Okay, social chit chat." Question. I ran across something that's kind of exciting. I'm really looking at this. I think I can make a ton of money. I want to know if you'd be interested. And then you shut up. And at the end of that call, and then you say, what did the person do? They say yes, no, maybe. And then you look at that and say, okay, well, they didn't respond to that. Well, we'll try something else. So again, how do you approach somebody? Well, it depends on who they are. It depends on their circumstances. Now, again, the way I did this was very simple. I got approached on product. I didn't need the product. I started with the product approach, and I went to people. I said, "You're going to have the best night's sleep in the world." And then I found out, because of the product that we had, that they didn't right away. So I had to go away from that. But then I started to do some surveys, and 94% of the people that joined Nikin in the 90s joined to make money. So I thought, okay, I need to make money. They need to make money. So I'm going to ask for money. Then it dawned on me, well, again, how many people are on planet Earth? Billions. How many people work in the United States? Do you know that? It's 160 million people plus. And the average income in the United States is $73,000 or $67,000 a year. Why is everybody working? Because they need to put food on the table. They need to put a roof over their head. They got bills to pay. They got hoodwinked into getting credit cards and going into debt and having to service the bankers and et cetera, right? So they have to work. See, again, here's the thing. Don't go for the people that don't need this. Go for the people that do need this. And who are those people? People that are working, people that are slaving, people that are trafficking and going through, commutes and all that kind of stuff. And, look at the last lessons we had and look at the benefits, because it's all based on the benefits. And then you ask the questions. Would you be interested in? Would you like this? Et cetera, et cetera. And here's the other thing that was very important. You don't need an army yourself. You need a couple of 3 people. And then you build the depth and understand how the business works. But again, it's all based on what? Learning what to say, learning how to say it, and communicating that. So step 1, script it. Script it. Now, here's another way that I learned how to do this, was going out and talking to people and doing surveys. So here's a great exercise. Go out into the public and ask them what time it is. Just ask them what the time is and see what happens. And get very familiar with talking to somebody you don't know. Then once you've got the time, then ask for directions. And watch what happens in the sense of doing that. Now with COVID, it might be a little bit more difficult because people are afraid you'd have to wear your mask and whatever. And the other way that I learned how to do a lot of things in that sense was do surveys. So I used to do the seminar, and it's on my webpage, and it's the "What do you do" game. And it was very effective in getting you to talk to people that you didn't know. But here's what I found out by talking to people that you don't know. If they have the need and the demand, again, they'll buy your product or they'll join you in the business. I threw an ad in the paper in 1991 when I first got going, and the guy that came to my ad was a a successful realtor, commercial real estate guy, Chuck Michael. And his industry went kaflooey, down, just like it is today. He had a family, he had 2 kids, he had a car payment, a mortgage payment, life insurance, all that stuff. He needed to make money. So he saw my ad, he came down, we talked, instant rapport, car salesman stuff, showed him what the benefits were, showed him how the program worked, what we had to do, created the camaraderie to working together, showed him the structure, how it worked, gave him the concept of workability like we did in the planning and strategy session. He saw it, he said, okay, I'm ready, let's go. He puts down his $1,500 and I said, we'll go see you next week and I'll come out and visit you. You line up people for me to talk to. Well, 2 weeks, I went out there every day and he had 20 people a day for me. Now, here's the message I want you to understand about this one. That wasn't me. That was him. That was his life. That was his circumstance. That was his realization. That was his view. He saw something for him, a benefit, and he acted on it. I was the catalyst. That's what I was. I told him the story. I showed him the opportunity. I answered his questions. I knew where to lead him. I knew what to say. I knew the plan. I knew the structure. I knew how it worked. And I communicated that. He went on, and again, in our current terminology, he went gold in like 90 days. And at that time, it was a 40,000 to go silver. So you can understand the meat. And that leg is still going today. And that's 32 years later. And we just built it deep in depth. And my Chuck went on to be a network marketer extraordinaire. But here's the point. The point is you never know who you're going to talk to. I'm sitting on a plane. The person in front of me gets up. She's grimacing. I look at her and I say, okay, a look, observation, I'm a Nikan guy. So I said, are you okay? And she said, yeah, post-polio. I had mag boys in my, the rollers, balls, and mag steps, so I gave her said, roll these on your body part that's affected. An hour later, she gets up just like, boom, turns to me and say, wow, those are really interesting, but I don't want to do another network marketing deal. Okay, but I'll buy your product. So she hands me $100 bill and I gave her the 2 products. You never know who you are going to talk to. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So here's the skill. The skill is to present. The skill is to ask. The skill is to show and tell. And the only way you're going to do that is to get out there and practice and practice and practice and practice and practice and practice and practice. And when you do enough practice, what happens? You become good at what you're doing. You get the gift of gab, anybody that can come along. Another plane situation. I'm in the plane, middle aisle. A lady comes down the runway and she turns to the guy behind her and says, can you help me lift my bag up? I can't get my arm past my shoulder. Huh. She says that in front of a Nikan guy? Come on, give me a break. This is too easy. She sits right beside me. Oh my God. It's like shooting ducks in a barrel. So she sits down there, and now I don't talk about her situation or Nikan or the product for the first half hour of the plane ride. First half hour, rapport. Where are you going? Where are you going? Da-da-da, social chit-chat, da-da-da. Oh, by the way, I couldn't help but hear you say you had a challenge lifting your arm. Oh my God, this was like, it opened up a library of information and data about her health and her situation and her problems and her challenges. By the end of the flight, she bought every product that I had to sell in Nikan at that time: a sleep system, a car seat, a roller, a foot, the whole nine. It's about $4,000 worth of products. She gets home, I get home, phone her up, and again, phone sales, control, learn to communicate, answer the questions, handle the objections, blah, blah, blah. She bought the product. She's a happy camper. Who knew? Now, I didn't know this person. I had never met this person. I had no clue about who this person was. They just came into my life. And at that point in time, what did I do? I observed what was going on. I communicated with them. I found out what was needed and or wanted, and then I delivered that and got the end result. Okay. So you have nobody to talk to. I find that hard to believe, but you have nobody left to talk to because you exhausted your warm list and everybody's told you to go take a flying leap. Now, what do? Well, you got to get out there. And again, here, this was lesson one of the Smart Networker. I'll kind of give away some of my stuff. But if you're going to be a network marketer, then by all means, be it. If you were going to be, and I was the owner of an insurance company and you came to work for me, okay, so the first thing I'm going to tell you is you got to tell everybody in the world that you sell insurance. Why? Because people want to buy insurance all day long. They sometimes don't know who to buy it from. They sometimes don't have pain or discomfort when they need it. They sometimes don't have people who die when you first introduce them. But boy, when that something happens, they think about insurance first thing. So I learned a valuable lesson there was that if I'm going to play the game, then play the game. If we're playing football, then we play football. We don't play tiddlywinks or badminton while we're playing football. We play football. If you're a network marketer and you're going to do Nikin, then you get up and you put your big boy Nikin pants on and you go out and be the best Nikin distributor you can be. It's got to be the way you play. Now, you get up to the top, you get to what you want, you got your residual income, you got your customers, you got your satisfaction, whatever it is you want, then you can take a stroll down memory lane and have a good time and go travel and whatever you want to do. But if this is important to you and you really want to make this work, well, then go to work. Go to work. Learn what you got to do. Get out there, communicate, ask questions, find out what's needed and wanted. Practice, 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 practice. Come back, evaluate the data, have a mentor, somebody that's done this business, knows what the ropes are. Talk to them, communicate, strategize, whatever it is that you have to do so that you win, because there's nothing like winning here. I mean, it's just absolutely incredible to win at this game. And I, last week, I unfortunately got sidetracked doing something else I wanted to do and didn't get my presentation complete. But that's the benefit of doing this business. I hit 45, was it 49? I was 1990. I think it was 49, and I retired. Because I had this huge residual income. I mean, it was huge from work that I did. And we're not supposed to talk money. We're not supposed to entice people. This is not new. This is training. But, I could do anything I wanted to do. I mean, I wasn't a billionaire, but I was doing really well. Opened up many other doors, many other business interests, many other profits, many other things happened in my life. And it was just all a blast. Why? Because I learned how to communicate. Next week, we're going to talk about the second skill, which is listening. And we'll deal with that next week. But the first skill is to learn how to communicate. So take a look at all the aspects that Nikin has to offer, figure out how to say them, what to say, script it, find a playmate, practice it till you get good, and then go out and hit the streets and just start talking. Next, okay, next, okay, next, okay, next. Somebody's going to come along and say, oh, yeah, this is great. I want to do this. Because if you think everybody is in the right place at the right time, you just think about this. There's a lot of challenges, or this opportunity would be a perfect fit for many people. Where are they? I can't tell you. You got to go lift the rocks and look behind the trees and the bushes and all that sort of stuff. All right, it's now I've gone too far. It's 10 o'clock. I'm going to end this recording, and then we'll open it up, see if there's any quick Q&A, and then we'll go from there. So stop recording. Bye. See you next week.